finish? Does it usually do that to you?
All right. It looks like we're live. Hopefully people can see us. It isn't, I'm not sure if I can. It's not really showing me a preview. As we get things up and running, we're already running a little behind here, but that's okay. That's as tradition around here for us. And it always takes a minute. I can hear. We can hear. We're on. All right.
We're on.
Here we go. Well, welcome everyone to an Apokalupsis Historia live on the fly, as we are coming to you here with some more, novel thoughts on the Shack.
The Shack. I love that. Shaquille O'Neal, Shakespeare, colliding.
The Shakespeare authorship scene, right? And I think we're moving the stone. We're setting new goals here for I think for the scene too. People don't want to acknowledge us. That's okay. They don't know where the real undercurrent of thoughts, really percolating up from. But that's all right. We'll
it's
be
not in the sack. It's in the shack.
Yeah, folks. We'll be like Batman in the night. Just doing what we can. Being accused of being a villain, and yet we're putting away. The psychopathic bad guys away,
Okay, folks, I just want to note, Brady and I did have a glass of mead, okay? So, just saying, if you're like, what's going on with this, guys? They haven't been on forever, now they're rambling about Batman. Okay, we're excited to be back. So excited. I get a million thoughts. For the first time in a long time, I've written notes in an outline. It's not 100% off the cuff. Maybe going to be 95% off the cuff, maybe. It's been a hot minute. Last time we were on, we were shouting at you that you're not reading enough Marston. You got to go check out your Marston to better understand the Labeo conversation. And, before that, a few weeks before that, maybe a month before that, we were shouting at you, you're not reading enough Nash. If you think that Nash equals DeVere equals Shakespeare equals Decker equals blah, 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 then you're wrong. Nash is his own man. Nash is Nash. You need to read more Nash. We're going to, maybe pitch some of the same stuff tonight. Some Nash, some Labeo, some Shakespeare. But we're also going to maybe call back to a few episodes before that. Decker. Decker's going to come up big time today. I want to sort of respond to very generally to some of Dennis McCarthy's Thomas North push. He has a lot of claims, and he's been firing off hot and ready, fast. He's keeping them coming all the time. Up on his Substack, on his Twitter, Instagram, all his social media, he's firing off. But I just want to maybe talk about one idea that he's pushing around that there may be something inside it, but I don't necessarily like how he's pushing it, so I want to give a word on that. And I also want to maybe bring up a discussion with the great Ross Barber. Ross Barber is sort of an icon in these sack circles, and on the one hand, I think really, really highly of her. On the other hand, I've had some issues with her scholarship. Not many. Like it's not like toss Ross out in the trash bin. No, Ross is good, but there's a few questions that I got that I want to kind of poke holes at. Kind of what we were doing last time we were here with Labeo. It was a lot of responding to Ross's own blog, Bardly True, with Labeo stuff, and Brady's gonna pull it up here. If you haven't checked out Ross's blog, go check out Bardly True. It's pretty great. It's not the only material she has online, but it is kind of a cohesive collection that she put together, putting out a bunch of ideas. Specifically, what we call anti-Stratfordian, but, just Shakespeare'd out questions saying, hey, let's look at the era itself. Don't worry about Delia Bacon or James Thomas Loney or any of these later scholars trying to doubt Shakespeare. Just go to the era itself, because there's stuff out there that we need to look at. And I totally agree with her there, but I have a few critiques that I do want to bring forward, and it will definitely tie in with the Dennis critiques. We will also, take a look at some other relevant material that are related to Dennis and Ross's stuff. We'll look at Ben Jonson's poem on Poet Ape. You can't see it, but I got it here in Jonson's complete poems. Brady's got it there. And that will relate to some of Jonson's plays, specifically some of his plays during the Poeta Machea, the War of the Theaters. We'll also very lightly touch on Nash, but Nash will be brought up a few times. And like I said, we're going to touch on Decker and specifically Satyromastics. And we're going to maybe tie a lot of this together. Another thing we'll be looking at is John Marston's Scourge of Villainies. And also, like we did last time, we're going to look at Labeo. We're going to look at Joseph Hall's Virgidemiarum. So, got a lot of stuff on the plate, but okay, you told us what we're
right before, because we have someone in the comments here, and I just want to say, yeah, thanks to everyone for showing up for the stream tonight. Make sure you also check out the links below for our Substack links for all of our essays and the Discord Patreon links. Come join us on our private Discord, only $3 a month, I think, for our access, for lifetime access. So yeah, come on by. But otherwise, we got Charles Hill here asking, can you give a brief overview of the Labeo situation, Labeo for Dummies, maybe before diving in here? We did a whole stream on Labeo, the last stream. I think that we did, actually, but I didn't have a fancy thumbnail for it yet. But yeah, if you can go ramble through that. If you can sum it up right before.
Charles, that's an excellent question.
And what's up, Philip?
Okay, so in 1597, this guy, Joseph Hall, who later became kind of a somewhat famous, somewhat powerful, well-regarded bishop. He's called the bishop or Bishop Hall sometimes. This is before he's totally a bishop. He's coming out of Cambridge. In 1597, he puts out what is considered the first English satire. Now, when I say satire, it's not our exact meaning today, our exact meaning today is more of a general sense that, okay, satire is just something that pokes fun at something. But specifically, he's coming out with the Roman, poetic form of satire, where it's a specific kind of poem in a specific kind of format, and it's being modeled after people like Juvenal, who's a Roman poet, and Persius, who's a Greco-Roman poet, both classical figures. And there's others as well. I forget the guy that wrote, maybe Petronius, I forget his name, that wrote Trimalchio and West Egg. But that was kind of a big thing for Romans, was writing satirical poems, these satires. And so Hall's like, look, there's no room to be a poet in the 1590s, so he's trying to kind of find a niche that hasn't been taken, and he figures, satires, nobody's really done that. And so when he does that, he makes his own poetic form of the satire, but in that, he uses all these nicknames to kind of poke fun at modern poetry. And so his satire specifically is attacking the contemporary poetic scene of the 1590s, and it's kind of a complex, sort of difficult tone to unpack, because on the one hand, he's bemoaning that the times of now, the times of the 1590s, are nowhere as near as good as the olden days, the 1570s, or even the days of Chaucer, or even the days of classical stuff. Those are, going all the way back to ancient Greece, right? Like, those guys, they're the best. But on the other hand, like, he totally understands that the language of his contemporary scene, the power they have, the talent they have, it may surpass everything that's ever come before him. Yet he still laments the current state of poetry, because there's this hypersaturation, there's this hyper-competition, there's this overwhelming sense that things have gotten democratized to the point where everybody can say anything. And I particularly find that incredibly relevant to now, with the whole social media scene and everybody and their mother on YouTube or Instagram or whatever, and anybody or everybody can pitch their message, and it all kind of gets lost in the ether, gets lost in the noise. And Joseph Hall's already complained about that in 1597. But when he's complaining, he's also like literally making complaints about what is happening in the contemporary poetry scene. So he's complaining there's too much erotic poetry. There's too many people trying to just make a name for themselves by being a poet when they probably shouldn't be. There's a lot of people that have the talent, and you can see the talent, but they're not utilizing it in the correct ways. And so he has all sorts of different complaints, but when he voices these complaints, he will voice it through these kind of characters that he's making fun of. And so he'll have these characters like Matho or Gullio or Ruffio or Strabo or all these kind of Greco-Roman sounding names, and he'll make fun of each of them for a certain kind of thing. The one that he attacks the most and the most directly is Labeo. And so there are 6 books in this satire, and it amounts to like 100-something pages. And each of those books is broken up into chapters of satires, and so they're numbered like Satire 1, Satire 2 in each book. And Labeo just gets maybe the most screen time. And even if not exactly the most screen time, which he probably does, it's still the most potent screen time. It's so direct. And so most of the Orthodox, Elizabethan studies have looked at this and said, oh, this is neat, this is interesting, but they haven't really linked it to Shakespeare. Excuse me. They don't think it's that really directly related to Shakespeare, whereas most of the Shakespeare authorship questioning community reads this and they're like, guys, this is a direct attack on Shakespeare. And in our recent video, I'm kind of in the middle, where it's like, I don't think it's as much an attack directly on Shakespeare. I do think it's an attack on other people, specifically John Marston mostly, but also people like Thomas Nash, Samuel Daniel, Michael Drayton, Joshua Sylvester, who are all, similar kind of Shakespeare-sounding figures. But I do think that there's a lot of stuff in Joseph Hall that does sort of point to Shakespeare, and it's still not quite clear to me what I'm supposed to take away from that, but it seems to me that Joseph Hall sort of likes Shakespeare. At least he likes the poem Venus and Adonis, and it seems to me that he's not cool with other people's kind of crummy versions of Venus and Adonis. That said, I'm not sure that he totally is in love with Edward de Vere, the Earl of Oxford. I'm not totally sure that he's linking Venus and Adonis to other Shakespeare plays. So all that's kind of up for grabs, and I'm still parsing through it, and I've been parsing through it for like 2-3 months here now. Like it's getting kind of crazy. But my take was basically that the stuff about Labeo could point to a lot of these people, but it most directly points to John Marston, and John Marston himself seems to attack Joseph Hall back right after this Virgidemiarum publication comes out, because John Marston comes out with the Metamorphoses of Pygmalion and certain satires, and in some of those satires he responds to Hall, and then right after that he comes out with Scourge of Villainies, and in that he seems to also attack Hall, and in a lot of that he seems to point to himself as Labeo. Whether that means Hall actually meant Marston as Labeo or not, that's maybe another question, but it does seem that Marston himself is pointing to himself as Labeo. And so some of these Shakespeare doubters have cited both Hall and Marston as pointing to Shakespeare as Labeo, and in our most recent video, I tried to point to, Hall I think is pointing to Marston, but Marston is for sure pointing to himself. But, like I said, that's been ongoing, and I'll get to that in a second. I hope that answers that. Appreciate the question, Charles. I don't want to get too derailed on that, because I got a lot of stuff to cover. But if you get more questions, sound out here in the chat box or later in the comment section. Philip, so glad you're here, man. Great to see you. Let's see. Any other stuff you want to cover real quick, Brady, before we dive in? Go watch the other Labeo video in case you want more of a context on that. I had it up here on screen. And yeah, this is just so crucial to not just
sort of a Shakespearean question, right? Because we'll sort of point out the ironies of like the Orthodox view of this whole question, right? And just how this just even when we go look at other Shakespeare authorship questions, if they insert their own Labeo opinion, we already start to scratch our heads if they already start making these assumptions maybe that you're about to sort of like start to unpack here, right? So there's a lot of like juicy stuff that kind of extends from this topic outwards to just Orthodox
like,
scholars.
Don't tunnel vision it into just one thing because there's so much information in these texts. Okay, cool. Real quick, I want to give a shout out to 3 people. Super shout out to David Richardson, one of our favorite book club members, and just want to say we're constantly going back and forth. Want to give a shout out to Mark Hazlitt, aka Floating Homes. If you see the comments section, you see Floating Homes. Read his comments. He's an Oxfordian. He's got some good stuff to offer. Real quick, I just wanted to show that, as much as reading some of these authorities is great and watching these videos is great, the thing that I really, really love is discussion, right? And after our Labeo video, so, that video is, a month old or something? After that Labeo video, Mark Hazlitt, a.k.a. Floating Homes, reached out to me and said, hey, look, I still got some thoughts that I want to go on. And we were doing on the YouTube comment boards, but at some point, like, we had so much to say that YouTube was like starting to glitch and crash and was not happy with us bombing the comment section. So he reached out to me on Substack, and like literally in the last 3 weeks we've been going back and forth. And like Brady, if you scroll, like you just show them how long this is, because and by the way, Mark made this document. He took all the stuff that we've been going back and forth on Substack and he copy and pasted and made an actual Word document out of it. This is 117 pages, guys. We've been going back and forth. And he's like, what about this? And I'm like, no, what about this? And okay, yeah, that, but no, you're misreading it here. He's like, okay, chance maybe I'm misreading it here, but what about this? And I'm like, oh crap, maybe you're not misreading it. Maybe that blah, blah, blah. And we've just been going back and forth. And, at some point, some of it we've been going in circles because I won't budge on some points. He won't budge on other points. But some points we will budge on. And I think that's a big thing. Like that's not nothing. And so I just wanted to say thank you, Mark. Thank you, Floating Homes, for getting this going. I would love to do this with more people. Find me on Substack.
Join the Patreon.
Our Patreon, and you can do this on Discord all day. Like that. as David. As the other one I want to give a shout out to is Daniel Cowan, who has been corresponding with me pretty regularly on Discord. We'll pop off to each other maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks or something like that, and he'll relay 20-30 pages of text at me, and I'll relay 20-30 pages of text back at him, and we're talking about all sorts of stuff, guys. With Daniel especially, all things SAC, and he said something really special to me the other day, and I don't want to sound too much like a preacher, but I'm gonna get up on my pulpit here, because he said something to me that like really, really resonated to me. Give me 1 second to scroll to it. I'm so sorry, guys.
And shout out to him again from my side, because he also hooked me up with a website that had a copy of Marshall McLuhan's study of Thomas Nash and the Trivium Classical Studies history, essentially. And I'm not even sure exactly what I'm going to be finding in here, but I've been trying to get my hands on this text for a while because you cannot find it anywhere. But he disclosed this amazing archive website that he stumbled upon or found or whatever, I don't know, but it came in super clutch for me today, so super shout out for that.
Okay, I'm almost there, guys.
He's almost there. You saw the text he had with Floating Homes, just imagine, along this other text he has.
Keep rambling, Brady. It's taking
I plan on making a whole, once I dive into the Marshall McLuhan thing, I'm very interested in that. I don't know really what to talk about it here for. It doesn't really relate to it. If we talk about Thomas Nash, it will, I suppose. Yeah, we're going to be talking about Thomas Dekker. That's a person we've been talking about for a long time. In fact, I would say like our biggest video, the Henzo Diary video, is sort of like a 1/4, 1/3 Thomas Dekker video. Like that name's probably used a lot in that video, just talking about, well, hey, this guy wrote that play and this play that has the same Shakespeare name play. Are they related at all? Yeah, we just kind of asked that question a lot. So yeah, definitely the Henslow Diary video is also like a Thomas Dekker video in a sense too.
Right.
You know.
Okay, sorry guys, found it. But okay, I just want to quote Daniel here. Quote: "It seems," and I didn't ask Daniel if I could do this, but I'm going to do it anyway. Sorry, Daniel, putting you on the spot. Quote: "It seems much more like this authorship space allows for an endless amount of people proposing new theories and ideas." Which, that's good on one case, right? But these theories, both the really flawed ones and the more valid ones, they rarely ever get evaluated or critiqued. Not deeply enough. Most of the new theories get ignored. You never hear about them again. And some of the theories get promoted and people take them up and then act as if they're the gospel truth. But hardly anything actually gets evaluated. I'm not really sure how this can be remedied. A person can set up some kind of central forum or journal that would be the locus for theories to be evaluated. But it seems like that's never going to happen. For the most part, I think it just relies on all of us individual members of the authorship space to be diligent, at the very least, and be aware of the precise details of the new theories being made. And maybe also keep our eyes and ears open for all the critiques being made of these theories. But that surpasses pretty much any of the individual's times and abilities. The subject matter, even though it's fairly limited, it's beyond what pretty much any of us can really manage on our own. And I don't think that this has to be so much of a problem, as even as we all can't know everything, a lot of us do have a pretty solid grasp of certain limited areas of this question. I think maybe as a collective effort, I feel like we could manage to evaluate and assess all the new theories that are being proposed. But this would require all of us to be perpetually attentive, and disciplined, and honest, and understanding, and relatively unbiased, perpetually engaged in the hard grinding work of scholarship. It's kind of a big ask. I'm not sure how many people are really up for this kind of work. But I know there are a number of people who are up to this kind of task, at least over the course of many years. I've met a few. And I just like, whoa, like what a sobering, what a, I would like you guys to all take that to heart, no matter who your candidate is, no matter if you're just kind of a noob in the SAC or if you're super, deeply ingrained in the SAC. I think that we do need to start coming together for some sort of discussion, and I don't think this is even limited to the SAC. I think this is an issue with Shakespeare studies as a whole. Like, I was pointing out to Daniel in response that, like, take a time machine back to 2013, and Professor Douglas Brewster of University of Texas came out with this, like, world headline stuff. Everything from the New York Times, the Guardian, South African newspapers, everything. They're all talking about, whoa, we found that Shakespeare did the additions to Thomas Kyd's Spanish tragedy. Douglas Brewster proved it. People like Jonathan Bate came out and gave him the old clap, gave him the old nod, said, oh, good job, you did it. But fast forward just a few years, not even to now, just a few years, and that what was claimed as some heralded new fact was no longer some new fact. It was kind of questioned, and it's not like anybody ever came out and said, oh, that's wrong because of this, or that. I mean, not even that many people came out and said, well, what about this or that? Like, it just kind of came out, people clapped, and then it died. And fast forward to now, and almost nobody's saying what Douglas Brewster was saying. But it's not like something came out and trumped it. What happened? Well, I think at some point, we as a humanity, we as an English-speaking society, whatever you want to call it, we're coming to terms with the internet, man. We're like, in 2013, the internet's still so new. And so when you find a few things like Douglas Brewster did, you're like, oh shit, I finally found the rock that I need to overturn. I finally found the missing clue that we didn't see. I got it. And that felt so true in 2013. But you fast forward to now, we've found 1,000 other rocks through the internet, through clicking, go here, read that blog, read that text, connect it with that thing. All those connections have made us realize we've overturned thousands more, and there are thousands more yet to overturn. And so all of a sudden saying, oh, this one rock that I overturned, it doesn't feel as big a deal anymore. You're like, well, maybe that points to something, but what about all this? What about Johnson being in Henslow Diary for doing additions to Hieronymo, who's the main character of Spanish Tragedy?
Yeah, you're not considering our rock museum here.
Right. Right. And so...
As you like to say, yeah, throw that shrimp on the Barbie.
Yeah, throw another shrimp on the Barbie. And so at some point, this is an issue at large, dealing with all these new ideas, all these new proposals, because at some point, what has been the bedrock, we're realizing isn't much more than a proposal itself. And so any other new proposal seems almost as good as the bedrock foundation. And I don't know if you guys are realizing how destabilized this has all gotten. And I'm loving it. Personally, I'm McDonald's. Yeah, like I'm there. Like let's destabilize this. Let's crumble it all down. Start from top. I don't care. Let's do it. Because at some point that's where I'm getting here. That's where we're going with this. So yeah, let's destabilize. Okay, let me open up with old Dennis McCarthy.
Which is paywalled.
Yeah, always paywalled.
Unlike Chances and Eyes, the true scholars.
Yeah,
shout out to Michael, my one volunteer supporter. Shout out.
Shout out to Michael Burr. You were the man. Okay, so Dennis McCarthy is not some no name. He's a bigwig in the sax scene because he came up with his own singular theory, which is kind of hard to do. J. Thomas Loney came up with his in 1923 or something. It's Edward de Vere. Leslie Hodson, or not Leslie Hodson. The guy that based his work off of Leslie Hodson, I forget his name, came up with Marlowe in the 50s, Charles something. Everybody's got their pitch. But Dennis is one of the few that's been able to pitch a new name in the modern era and get it to sort of stick. Maybe it hasn't caught on fire or anything, but there's been 3 modern names. There's been, Henry Neville, Mary Sidney, and Thomas North. There's been a recent addition, Ralph Steadman, but don't worry about Ralph Steadman. Don't worry about that little guy. So yeah, Thomas North, and he's maybe the most recent, and he's gained as much or more of a following than the Neville, and he's managed to get a book about it. So okay, I'm not really going to critique all of his Thomas North stuff. I will say outright that I think it's generally absurd to say that Thomas North is Shakespeare. It's like saying Chuck Berry is Jimi Hendrix. It's I see what you're getting at, but it's not right, and so just generally speaking, I can't accept it from the get-go. I've read Thomas North. It's not bad writing. It's historical Elizabethan writing, but there's absolutely no way that man wrote the final folio works of Shakespeare, as Dennis sort of confusedly says. What I want to sort of critique Dennis on today is his pitch, which is maybe a more recent pitch of his. He's pitching that William Shakespeare of Stratford, the fake Shakespeare, not the guy that wrote the real stuff, but the play broker whose name gets put on the stuff. He says that guy is going around buying up all these plays and reworking them, readapting them, and then printing them under his own name, and that's what the Shakespeare Apocrypha is. That's what the bad quartos are. Some of the early quartos, like Romeo and Juliet, or the bad Hamlet quarto, or some of that stuff. That's all just Shakespeare. That's all Shakespeare trying to adapt what is a finer, more masterpieceful Thomas North play, or just adapting somebody else's play. And I personally find that utterly disgusting and repulsive of a theory. Like, if you buy into that, like, I'm not gonna like you. Like, just if I meet you in person, you're like, oh, I like Dennis McCarthy's Shakespeare stuff. I may like punch you. Like, that's how much I'm repulsed by these theories. And to be fair, it's because I'm so much an internal evidence guy. When you read something from an impressionistic feel down to the stylometry, where you're counting words, doing collocations, all that stuff, there's no way that you can say that all of this apocrypha has one singular common hand. And even if a big mass of that is one singular common hand, there's no way that you can attribute that to yet another writer who is undocumented outside of that. You need some base set of text to compare the anonymous stuff to. And so he's just looking at the external evidence and just plopping a name on it very, very lazily, very stupidly. I'm sorry. It is stupid, though. And so it's like, okay, I see that you're onto something, Dennis. Let's go a step farther than just, oh, Shakespeare did it. So yeah, let's go a step farther. One of his big reasons, or one of his big pieces of evidence for citing that Shakespeare did this, is that Ben Jonson wrote a poem about him. Old Ben Jonson himself wrote a poem about Shakespeare, and it was called On Poet Ape. Old Shakespeare from Stratford, he's not the real guy, he's just some poet ape. Okay, maybe that's true, maybe that's not. Let's look at that poem. I got it printed out here. Poor poet ape, that would be thought our chief. Okay, thought to be the boss, thought to be maybe in charge of folks. Whose works are eaten the frippery of wit. Okay, so frippery means like, excessive, ornamental, flowy, flowery, of wit. So, battle of wits, a lot of puns, a lot of, love's labor's lost kind of stuff. Oh, Shakespeare maybe. As we the robbed leave rage and pity.
You skipped from brokage.
That's a very important line. From brokage, which is the older word for brokerage. So brokerage, buying up rights to something, owning the thing. From brokerage is become so bold a thief, as we the robbed leave rage and pity it. At first, he made low shifts, so didn't make much money. Would pick and glean, buy the reversion of old plays, now grown to a little wealth and a credit in the scene. He takes up all, makes each man's wit his own, and told of this, he slights it. Tut, such crimes the sluggish gaping auditor devours. He marks not whose 'twas first, and after times may judge it to be his, as well as ours. Fool, as if half eyes will not know a fleece from locks of wool, or shreds from the whole piece. Okay, so clearly Johnson's going after somebody for buying up plays, loosely adapting them, then putting his name on it, and saying, this is all me. Or even not just buying up old plays, but doing collaborations with other people. And then only saying, I'm the guy that did it. I get the credit. Which may point to print stuff, but I don't think it necessarily has to point to print stuff. It could. Okay, so Dennis McCarthy's like, yeah, who else could this be? Well, I don't really quite understand Dennis, because Dennis is like 110% anti-conspiracy theory. He, thinks that anything that's outside the norm of scientific understanding is a conspiracy theory. So if you don't 100% kowtow to Darwin, if you're anybody that's like a Lamarckian, or I don't think people are Lamarckians anymore, but if you're creative design, or if you have some sort of other belief, you're a nutso conspiracy theorist. And, you can make your own opinions on that statement. But he says that about, if you believe Donald Trump, you're a nutso conspiracy theorist, which, once again, make your own belief about that. He says that about all these things. But then with Shakespeare, he's like, oh yeah, but the regular Shakespeare narrative, that's absolute bullshit, and the real truth is my truth. it's this guy Thomas North, and they don't want you to know about that. And it's like, wait, Dennis, isn't that a fucking conspiracy theory? Like, what are you doing, dude? Like, are you crazy? So I don't know exactly what to do with Dennis, but I do know that I don't like his idea that this is pointing to Shakespeare, because if Dennis had bothered to read any of Ben Jonson's plays, which I doubt he does, and he flipped open to, I don't know, say Cynthia's Revels or The Poetaster, Ben Jonson's attacking a few certain people. And obviously one of the persons he's attacking is John Marston, because John Marston is who attacks Ben Jonson and vice versa, and they're attacking each other. But when he's attacking John Marston, he attacks John Marston through several characters, but the one he attacks him through the most is this character, Crispinius. And Crispinius is from The Poetaster especially, and it's pretty clear Crispinius is John Marston. Okay, but here's the thing. Crispinius is not alone. Crispinius has this buddy, Demetrius. And Demetrius is made fun of, as well as Crispinius, by Jonson. And Jonson basically says that Demetrius is going about town buying up plays and putting his name on it. And claiming that crap as his own. So it would seem to me that this Demetrius is quite the same person as on Poet Ape. Jonson's attacking both of them. Jonson's attacking both of them for the same reason. Okay, there you go, Dennis. Demetrius must be your Shakespeare. But here's the problem, folks. Have you seen the problem? Shakespeare and Marston, are they buddies or not? I thought you sack doubters were saying that Marston was attacking Shakespeare. So if they're buddies, what is Jonson writing about? Well, here's the thing, guys. Marston wasn't attacking Shakespeare, or Marston is making fun of himself. So forget that Labeo stuff for a second. And then come back to here and look at Demetrius in Poetaster. That's Thomas Dekker, guys. It's clearly Thomas Dekker. Thomas Dekker and John Marston write several plays together. And at some point, I don't think people have realized that this whole Poets' War, it probably, and I know probably, chance, probably, it could be anything, but it probably surrounds a play called Robert Duke of Normandy, Robert Duke of Normandy, Robert II. And it is a tragedy. It's from 1598. It's in the Henslow Diary, and it's in the Henslow Diary is written by Jonson, Dekker, and then there's an edition that says Marston's adding to a play. It doesn't say which play he's adding to, but people have said it's either Les Dominion, a.k.a. the Spanish Moorish Tragedy, or it's Robert Duke of Normandy. So people have said, like, okay, look, we don't have this play anymore, but this play was probably really well regarded because it's probably the reason that Francis Meres and his Pallidus Tamia list Dekker is the best for tragedy and list Jonson the best for tragedy. Because fun fact, if you guys aren't out there reading your Jonson or Dekker, they're not especially famous tragedians. They're incredibly famous comedians. In fact, their comedies are better than Shakespeare's. They're the only people that made better comedies than Shakespeare. You can argue maybe Middleton, Marston, but Marston's stuff is all tragic comedy anyway. So I don't know that I'd say straight comedy, but you can throw Marston in there. But those three people are all funnier than Shakespeare. I'll put my hat on that, guys. But Meres calls them tragedians. It's because of this play. Okay? There's something big surrounding this. Okay. Let's maybe discuss why Dekker is on Poet Ape. Let's look at On Poet Ape. And this actually ties into Ross Barber's blog, because Ross Barber has an entry about On Poet Ape. And Ross Barber says, who is Poet Ape? And Ross Barber actually ends up landing on the same thing as Dennis McCarthy. This must be Shakespeare. This must be Shakespeare, the play-broken thief. And she says, she looks at two other people. She's like, there's only two other people this could be. It could be Marston or Dekker or Shakespeare. And then she looks at Marston and Dekker and she's like, well, clearly Marston's not the one that's stealing plays, so it's not him. And yeah, maybe Decker steals plays, but because Ben Johnson says wealth, it can't be Decker because he goes to debtor's prison at points in his life. And this is where I can't agree with Ross for a second here. Because, one, Ben Johnson says a little wealth. He doesn't say he's super fucking rich. He says a little wealth. A little bit. And that's after being pretty fucking broke. Well, Decker's pretty famous for being pretty fucking broke. And then Decker, right after that, goes on to be the highest paid playwright in the Elizabethan theater scene. Let me say that one more time. Thomas Dekker is the highest paid playwright in the entire Elizabethan theater scene. Not only is he the highest paid playwright, he's the most prodigious playwright. He writes more plays. He has a higher output than anybody else. He collaborates with more people. And in fact, fun fact, he collaborates with every writer of the era, every dramatic writer of the era, except for Shakespeare and Chapman. Let that sink in for a second. Just pick a playwright. Dekker wrote with him. Everybody except Shakespeare and Chapman. And like it's like, okay, well, it's not just Shakespeare, it's Chapman too. Let me tell you, Chapman's buddies with Johnson, and at some point, yeah, Dekker wrote with Johnson, but after their feud, he never writes with Johnson again. Okay? And so if Chapman's his buddy, he's probably not going to write with him after a certain year. And if he didn't get a chance to do so before then, he's not going to write with him. Also, I do think Chapman's the only dramatic writer of me, other than Cyril Turner, who's not major enough to be noted here, but I don't like George Chapman. He's not a good writer. Every one of these other writers is a better writer than George Chapman. And something in me says that Thomas Dekker kind of recognized that. And so we're left with just Shakespeare. Why would Thomas Dekker, the highest paid playwright, highest collaborative guy, who wrote for Lord Chamberlain's Men at the same time as Shakespeare, why would he never write with Shakespeare? Or vice versa? What's going on there? Like, I'm not joking, guys. Like, 1600, 1601, 1602, Thomas Dekker, Ben Jonson, and Shakespeare are the only known playwrights for the Lord Chamberlain's Men. Like, Middleton comes later, Webster comes later, and both of those are the main co-writers of Dekker, by the way.
Because Shakespeare never collaborates. Don't you know the singular genius and,
Oh, except he does collaborate in his early years with Peele, with Lodge, with Kidd, with Marlowe, with Greene. And he does in his later years with maybe Middleton, with Fletcher.
Webster, maybe? Maybe?
Maybe, but no Dekker. Chance. What are you talking about, Thomas Dekker?
They merely share play titles, but that's it, Only play title names, right? They both can write Tragedy of Troilus and Cressida and Taming of a Shrew or The Shrew, but not the same plays at all.
It's not the same.
Not related.
Not related. Which, yeah, by the way, guys, in the Henslow Diary, Thomas Dekker in 1598, along with Henry Chettle, wrote a play called Troilus and Cressida. Shakespeare's play is supposed to come out after that. I know if you're an Oxfordian or a Northian, you're going to say, oh, Chance, those came out long before Dekker's, and Dekker's just reworking it. Oh, wait, you're saying Dekker's taking an old play and buying up the rights to an old play and adapting it? Huh. Like a poet ape would say. So, guys, we're going to go both ways here. Like, I'm going to get you either way. Or you're just going to say, no, Chance, I checked the Folger website, and that's a different play. But... Guys, I can go toe to toe Folger here. Go read the Folger site. Brady's working the camera here. Don't mind him. Go read the Folger site, and you will realize that what their argument against Dekker and Shakespeare's being possibly the same play is not at all substantial. They just say somebody had notes about an Agamemnon Troilus play. But fun fact, there's several plays about Agamemnon or Troilus and Cressida. Or the Siege of Troy.
And the Orestes, too.
And the Orestes. And so, like, at some point, it's hard to say that, okay, Shakespeare's maybe least structural play and his most satirical play is coming out a year or two after Decker, who is famous for writing structureless satires, writes his Troilus and Cressida. Come on, guys. Come on. Like, what are we saying here? And you know that if I had time, I would sit here and go through Troilus and Cressida and show you parallel passages. I would show you common themes between Decker and Shakespeare's play. We don't have Decker's Troilus and Cressida copy. It's lost to time, so we don't know if it is or isn't the same as Shakespeare's. But I can go to other Decker plays and say, look at this line, look at that moment, look at this line, look at that moment. And yes, I know parallel passages are somewhat perilous sometimes, but it's the strongest case I think I could possibly make for Decker is Troilus and Cressida. Maybe other than Antony and Cleopatra, which is also
Merchant of Venice too.
So there's Act 2 in Merchant of Venice. There's Act 1 in Julius Caesar. There's Act 1 Romeo and Juliet. Like Act 1 Scene 1 specifically in Julius Caesar Romeo and Juliet. Those are intensely Deckerian like scenes. Maybe it's not exactly Decker writing it, but at some point, how is Shakespeare so influenced by a guy that he never once co-wrote with? Whereas every other person that is influenced by Decker seems to be influenced by Decker because of collaboration. And so there's something that needs to be explained. And I know a lot of you guys are like, Shakespeare influenced by Decker? I'm turning this guy off right now. I'm unsubscribing from these guys. Because no fucking way Shakespeare would take influence from that no-name, that dweeb in that movie Anonymous, that guy. No,
yeah, right. Yeah, it's so bizarre, that portrayal of him. We've talked about
they have to do that so that they can bolster this moment for when I come with my Decker stuff, and they're like, "Oh, chance I've already got." Anonymous made sure to doubt that, and I don't know. It like kind of disgusts me. Like I'm be honest. Oh, that's the actor Thomas Decker. Screw that guy. I hate seeing that guy when I'm trying to find the Elizabethan writer.
Don't worry about it.
Yeah, okay. Brady's going to try and pull up a picture of the depiction of Thomas Decker from Roland Emmerich's 2011 film Anonymous.
And they have Thomas Nash too, right? And doesn't he like some big
oafish guy?
Yeah, it looks like it looks like this picture of Ben Johnson.
Yeah, it very much looks like that. And like honestly, that should have been Henry Chettle. Like Henry Chettle's Decker's best friend and co-writer kind of thing. One of them, because Decker has a lot. But Henry Chettle's famously made fun of by Decker for being fat, and so it was weird to me that they made Nash the fat guy when they had Johnson as a character, and Johnson was this suave Mediterranean looking dude, and it's like, who the fuck is that guy? Like seriously, like that guy looked way more like Marlowe, and then the Marlowe guy just was a generic foppy dude, and like, why would Marlowe be so foppy? Isn't Marlowe supposed to be the blue collar, like, yeah,
he was like this weird elitist kind of guy. Like, I don't know what the deal was.
Like, that's not from the Decker movie, but you could do that one because it is that actor.
Yeah, this is all him. I found the actor.
Like
Robert Ems.
What a dweeb. I'm sorry, Robert Ems, if you're watching our video.
Yeah, all they had him do is like
you
cackle.
were one uncool looking dude. Like, I'm sorry, man. And yeah, like, we don't have a picture of Decker. We don't know what he looked like, so why did they make him that way? Like, you could have made him look like anything. Could have given him like a tattooed face with Rastafari dreads, and that'd have been okay. But you made him into like just the nerdiest, dweebiest guy ever, and that royally pisses me the fuck off. I'll be honest. Okay, enough for that diatribe. Let us move further. Let's look at what Ross Barber has to say more on Poet Ape, because I don't like the idea that wealth is the only reason that we can preclude Decker, because, like, as I said, Decker has a lot of money, and even when he's like getting in trouble for debt, he's getting in trouble for giant amounts of money. He goes to prison supposedly from 1613 to 1620. He goes to prison for like, he's in debt 40 pounds to John Webster, which for most of history, guys, people said, oh, that's John Webster Sr., the coachmaker, who was a rich guy, and Decker borrowed money from him. But yeah, recently in 2014, Alan H. Nelson came out and said, guys, it's John Webster Jr., not John Webster Sr. So Decker is in 40 pounds of debt, which is like 5 years of wages. Maybe more like 10 years of wages. He's in 10 years of wages of debt to his best friend and co-writer. And that's a loan that he took out in 1607, and for whatever reason, hasn't paid it off for 6 years. And 6 years later, John Webster gets a lawyer, and that lawyer attacks Decker not just for John Webster's debt, but for 4 other debts, which amount to a total of like 70-something pounds, which is, a life's worth of money back then. It's like
$100 grand or $200 grand or something.
It's
maybe
like $1 million.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like 40 pounds is like a couple $100,000. And so all of that together, it's like a $500,000, $1 million. Like, I get that he's not paying off that debt, but that's not a broke guy. Broke people can't take those loans. Okay, you see how that works? Like I'm a broke person. The best loan I could get is maybe $5 or $10 grand from the fucking local bank. I can't pull out $500,000 in several loans. I could never do that. Thomas Decker was able to do that. So to say that he's in debt and he can't have a little wealth, that seems absurd to me. That seems like she is trying to force an issue. And so I'm wondering why Ross is forcing this issue, because right after she denies Decker, and you can scroll down a little bit, right after she denies Decker, keep going. My bad, scroll up. Plagiarism, click that link. Okay. So this is where she goes into, well, maybe it's Decker or Marston. Let's check. It may not be Shakespeare. And then she says, okay, Decker is in debt, so it can't be to him. So let's look at John Marston. And when she looks at John Marston, she brings up Ben Jonson's Poetaster. And she brings up Crispinius. And she shows that Crispinius isn't being made fun of for buying plays or for being a poet ape. So it can't be Marston. Did you actually read the play, Ross? Because right next to Crispinius was old Demetrius, where it does say that. So yeah, egg on the face. I don't know. Sorry, Ross. And at some point, this is where I need my charts. I want to bring up a weird phenomenon, and this is where I'm very uncomfortable. If I had my whiteboard, I would show you on my whiteboard. I have it on my page here, but here. That's my chart.
It's just, a 2x2.
It's a
2x2. Yeah.
Pundit square. And on the top, we have Poet Ape and Upstart Crow. Okay? On the sidebars, we have Authorship Doubter and then Orthodox. Okay? So, just to be clear, Poet Ape is being made fun of by Johnson for stealing plays and stealing people's lines and making it their own. Upstart Crow is someone that is being made fun of by Robert Greene for stealing plays and taking other people's lines and making it their own. Sounds like the same person, right? Okay, weird. Well, for most people, if you're an authorship questioner, you say that Poet Ape is Shakespeare, but Upstart Crow is not Shakespeare. So Ross Barber has a whole thing saying Upstart Crow is not talking about Shakespeare. Upstart Crow is talking about Edward Allen, which I kind of agree with. But then, all of a sudden, when it's Poet Ape making the same accusations, it is Shakespeare. And this is where I'm a little confused, because as much as I don't like Dennis McCarthy, at least Dennis McCarthy claims both. Dennis McCarthy's like, yeah, Upstart Crow is Shakespeare. Been stealing plays since day one. Poet Ape Shakespeare. Still doing it in the 1600s. It's always been Shakespeare. He's a goddamn thief. But this is the weird thing. Flip it. Say you're not an authorship doubter. Say you're some Orthodox person at some university or some person putting on a theater play stage
a stage version of a play, and you're some conventional, I think Shakespeare from Stratford's the super genius. Well, check it out. This is what's weird. It flips. If you're one of those people, you do think Upstart Crow is talking about Shakespeare, but you don't think Poet Ape is talking about Shakespeare. And it seems either way it's a hypocrisy. And so at least as much as I don't like Dennis, he's not being a hypocrite here. Whereas pretty much most of the rest of, I'll say us, are being hypocrites. Where Upstart Crow is one person and Poet Ape's another person. And that could be the case. But I just think that it's especially bizarre that we kind of all agree here that it seems like you think somebody's stealing something someplace, but not in the other place. Just depends on which place. And so, I don't know, something to me tells me that something is super deranged going on. Something is totally messed up. There's something rotten in the state of Denmark here, guys. Like, something is not adding up. Because this doesn't make sense. How can one thief line point to somebody and then another thief line doesn't, and then the other people think the exact opposite? Like, how can that be? What is happening here? And so I'm trying to unpack that. I personally do think that Upstart Crow does point to Edward Allen.
What's the top
Poet
row
Ape.
again?
Poet Ape.
Poet Ape is Shakespeare.
And you can yeah.
That's what it's supposed to be.
Yeah.
And then what's the second one?
Upstart Crow equals Shakespeare.
Okay.
There we go. Brady doing the chart on the fly. That's super cool.
Upstart Crow.
Look at him go.
Like that, right?
Other way.
Yoink. Y'all get the picture now?
And then, I guess, put a V in the other ones for like a check mark.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so the V is a check mark, guys. It's a little ghetto, but beautiful little chart Brady made here. This is the chart that I had written out. This is weird to me. Like, explain this. And maybe some of you guys don't totally adhere to this. Maybe you have a different opinion, and if so, please sound out in the comments, sound out in the chat bar here. What do you think of this? Like, what do we make of this? This is weird, right? And at some point,
this is funny.
It's kind of a leveling thing that, like, as much as Orthodox wants to say that the Sac people are crazy, we're saying kind of the same thing, right? And so, yeah, this is something I want people to think about. I do personally think that Upstart Crow is pointing to Edward Allen. I think Poet Ape is pointing to Thomas Dekker. So those are two different people, and so I guess in that sense, I'm two X's. I'm not two check marks. Dennis McCarthy's two check marks. I'm two X's. And so I would like to just say at some point, either me or Dennis is right. I don't think any of the rest of these people on this chart is right. And here's the thing. It's like, well, Chance, Edward Allen, Thomas Dekker, those are two different people, and why are they getting accused of the same thing? Here's the thing, guys. Thomas Dekker is super close with Edward Allen. While he's in prison, he writes more letters to Edward Allen than any other people combined. Okay, and that's like late in life. That's after working with the admiralsmen for that entire duration. Maybe not entire. There's breaks, right? So it's like, oh, okay, all right. There's some weird, bizarre connection between Allen and Dekker, but does that explain the chart? Maybe, maybe not. But let us move forward. Thank you for that chart, Brady. That's awesome, guys. I want you all to think about that.
Is that the same Allen that Philip Baltimore is referring to in The Life of Allen in his comment, the bigger one? Where he says, I was reading The Life of Allen?
Yes, that's him.
All right.
Yes. Yep. Because that's Philip Henslow's son-in-law, and he's...
Oh, really?
He's considered the greatest or second greatest actor
right.
of that whole era, tied with Richard Burbage. Edward Allen's the great Admiralsman actor. Richard Burbage is the great Lord Chamberlainsman actor. And and we'll see Richard Burbage in just a little bit here. I'm going to bring up the Parnassus plays. But before we do that, let's go a little further with this Decker thing. Okay, so Demetrius. Is that enough to say that it's for sure Demetrius is being made fun of in Johnson's play? But, Johnson's poem may be pointing to somebody different. It may not. I would assume they're being written around the same time, and I think usually people do date them similarly, but we can't be sure. But there's other stuff. Let's go ahead and look at old Joseph Hall himself. Let's go back to Labeo. Let's look at Virga Demiorum. In I think this is book 4 or 5, we got Satire 5, and Hall brings up this character Matho for the first time. And by the way, Matho may come from the name Mathos. It definitely comes from Juvenal, who uses the name Matho is a character in one of his satires, and that may be making fun of a real guy. But Mathos. Let's think about that name for a second. Maybe you've already recognized it. Play with those letters. Flip them around like an anagram. What name can you make with Matho?
Thomas.
Oh, Thomas! Whoa! Okay. Well, that's maybe not too telling because there's like a dozen Thomases around. But we can go ahead and cross them off. Thomas Watson's dead. Thomas Kidd's dead. Thomas Churchyard is old, moldy, retired, done with poetry by 1597-98. Let's see. Thomas Nash. It could be Thomas Nash. But I don't think it is because there's several other characters that seem to point to Nash. And also this line says, "Would now that Matho were the satirist, that some fat bribe might grease him in the fist, for which he need not brawl at any bar, nor kiss the book to be a perjurer. Who else would scorn his silence to have sold and have his tongue tied with strings of gold?" So there's a lot to unpack in that. Brawl at any bar is probably a Marlowe line. Kiss the book to be a perjurer could be a Johnson line, although I don't think he's had his neck verse stuff here yet. It could be also yet a Marlowe or a Kidd line because they're supposed to be, accused of atheism. But it's saying, Matho's not these people. Matho is this other thing entirely. So it could still be Nash, but like I said, I don't think it is. I think it's pointing to yet another person. Who's the only Thomas left? It's Thomas Decker. And when is Thomas Decker documented as, being on the scene? It's exactly 1597-98, right here. And so, okay, maybe it is, maybe it's not. Let's continue. Scroll down over on the search bar over there and go to that very last one. Okay. This section's not really directly talking about Matho or anything. It's talking about this Villius guy. But he uses this line in it because he's talking about how much money Villius is getting to bequeath to his kids. And he's saying, it's enough money to weigh down a leaden bride with gold. Worth all that Matho bought or Pontus sold. So here we got Matho doing some buying. Maybe buying up of old plays even. Huh. Okay, Chance, it doesn't say plays. You're maybe stretching. Okay, there's two ways we need to go here. We need to go further into Marston to continue this Matho thing. But while we're here, I want to talk about Pontus because I want to throw a bone to Oxfordians. So I was all talking about, look, guys, Labeo is not talking about Shakespeare, not talking about Oxford. Go screw yourselves. Well, this is where I need to check myself before I wreck myself, because Pontus does seem to me to be an Oxford reference. Why? Well, several reasons. One, this name Pontus. It sounds a lot like Pontian. We have that same Pont root. And Pontian is made fun of in this as well in just a few more pages. You don't have to click to it, Brady. But Pontian is made fun of for going to Rome and Venice, and while he's in Rome and Venice, his wife gets pregnant by some other guy. He comes back and cries out for adultery and says, "Oh, Julian law, adultery, oh my God, this is terrible. I've been screwed." Well, any of you guys familiar with the Edward de Vere story know that that's Edward de Vere. That's not pointing to anybody else. That's literally exactly what he did. Okay, so Pontian is pointing to Edward de Vere. Well, Pontian's never once again or before mentioned in this text. Pontian's mentioned once. But there's also a Ponton that's mentioned, and there's a Pontus, or Pontis, right here, twice mentioned. And this is one of the mentions. And so if we want to group the Pontian with the Pontus name, which I don't think is too much of a stretch, all of a sudden we know that Pontian's Oxford, and we here have Matho buying up maybe stuff that Pontus is selling. Do we here have Decker buying up Oxford's place? Did I finally do it? Did I finally find the Decker-Oxford connection, guys? You can go ahead and go to the Decker biography, Brady, if you can pull that up. This is, do you have the Mary Leland Hunt?
This one.
Okay, so if you want to read about Decker, the unfortunate thing is that all the information on him is over a century old. In fact, the 2 or 3 biographies I could find all came out right around the same time, 1911, 1912. And this one is from 1911, and this is probably by far the best one. But it is missing some stuff. Like I said, with Alan Nelson coming out with the John Webster court case, like none of the court case is in here. Mary Leland Hunt is totally unaware of it. But she does know that Decker goes to prison. But as much as she does have gaps, this is by far the most thorough thing you will find on Decker. And in this, she says that, like, look, we don't know what Decker's doing before 98. That's the first time he's in Henslow Diary, right? But the problem is that a lot of Orthodox scholars are like, oh, that's when Decker starts. But that's impossible. It's impossible that that's when Decker starts, because Decker's already the #1 main writer in Henslow. Maybe at that point tied with Drayton and Chettle, but they're the 3 main writers. You know, there's still another set of writers. There's Johnson, Chapman, Porter, Houghton, Wilson. There's all sorts of other guys. They don't have as near as much money or time or importance as Chettle, Decker, Drayton throughout the diary. Those are the 3 most important. Decker's by far the most important.
We don't have any Drayton plays, right?
We have Sir John Oldcastle Part 1, which he's supposed to have been part of, but people looking for internal evidence of Drayton to go say, here's his moment in the play, they struggle to find him.
Okay.
And so people said, I think Decker's probably more in Part 2 than Part 1, which we don't have Part 2. And I'll come back to Sir John Oldcastle in just a second here. Okay. Mary Leland Hunt, she's like, look, we know Decker's got to be writing before this because he's already the #1 guy, so what earlier plays could possibly be his? Well, one of the plays that she suggests is maybe Decker's very first play is an anonymous play called The Weakest Go to the Wall, which is a line in the very opening in Act 1, Scene 1 of Romeo and Juliet. That very act that I was saying sounded like Decker.
And if you were in the Areopagus Apokalupsis Historia book club, you'd be on the forefront of this.
Yeah, because this is
on the front lines of this information.
Okay.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the opening line of the most famous Shakespeare play is maybe referencing Thomas Decker.
All right, this is the second page. Samson says, "A dog of that house shall move me to stand. I will take the wall of any man or maid of Montague's." Gregory says, "This shows thee a weak slave, for the weakest goes to the wall." That's not just him making a joke. That play already exists, right? Like, that's a reference. Why would Shakespeare be referencing this no-name play? Okay. "'Tis true, and therefore," and this is Samson, "'tis true, therefore women, being the weaker vessels, are ever thrust to the wall. Therefore I will push Montague's men from the wall, and thrust his maids to the wall. The quarrel is between our masters and us their men. 'Tis all one. I will show myself a tyrant. When I have fought with the men, I will be civil with the maids. I will cut off their heads." The heads of the maids? Aye, the heads of the maids are their maiden heads. Take it in what sense thou wilt. They must take it in the sense that feel it. Me they shall feel while I'm able to stand, and 'tis known I'm a pretty piece of flesh. 'Tis well thou art not fish, if thou hadst been poor John. Draw thy tool. Here comes the two house of Montagues. My naked weapon is out. Coral, I will back thee. How? Turn thy back and run? Fear me not. No, Mary, I fear thee. Let us take the law of our sides. Let it then begin. I will frown as I pass by. Let them take as they list. Nay, as they dare. I will bite my thumb at them, which is disgrace to them if they bear it. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? I do bite my thumb, sir. Do you bite your thumb at us, sir? Is the law of our side if I say I? No. No, sir. I do not bite my thumb at you. But I bite my thumb, sir. I didn't have to read the rest of that, but I did want to get to the bite the thumb thing, because that's the famous line, so I wanted you to see that this scene has the famous shit in it, you know? This isn't just some sloppy scene. This is the opening scene of Romeo and Juliet, guys, and there is a reference to The Weakest Goes to the Wall. Why am I bringing that up? Well, the only printing of that play is printed, the title, The Weakest Goes to the Wall, printed in 1600, as played by the Earl of Oxford's Men. Might Decker be writing for the Earl of Oxford sometime in the 90s? Wild. Maybe. Maybe not. Crazy. I don't know. Maybe I was right a year or two ago when I said Decker was Oxford. Probably not. Okay.
Which ironically, like I said, that Bob Proctor ironically diverges from changes here again and says, "Nah, Thomas Dekker is not Oxford." You know, it's just
Which
funny.
I am going to bring up Bob because I'm going to side with him at some point.
all right.
Okay, let's go back to John Marston because let's keep the Matho game going. I just wanted to talk about Pontus for a second to bring up Oxford because he is in this scene. There's the good news, folks. Okay, John Marston and a Scourge of Villainies from 1598, a year after Virgil Demiorum. In this, he has all sorts of things to say about all sorts of characters, just like Joseph Hall, but he actually reprises this Matho name. Maybe he's just stealing it from Juvenal, but it seems to me that Marston is responding to Hall throughout this text. It's probably the case that Matho is used in the same context as Hall. So what does he say? Okay, I'm going to start just a little bit at the top of the paragraph there, or top of the stanza. Shall Lucia scorn her husband's lukewarm bed? And this is so when Hall is saying Marston's a dirty, or when Hall says that Labeo is a dirty, nasty, erotic poet, this is what I'm talking about when I'm talking about Marston being a dirty, nasty, erotic poet. I'll let you. Shall Lucia scorn her husband's lukewarm bed? Because her pleasure, being hurried in a jolting coach with a glassy instrument, doth far exceed the Pavian blandishment. Y'all got that right? Like saying this dude's bed is cold because his wife's not in it because she's taking the coach ride so she can bounce with her glassy instrument in her lap. Come on, guys. Filth, absolute filth. R-rated. But he continues. Whilst I, like to some mute Pythagorean, halter my hate, and cease to curse and ban such brutish filth. Shall Matho raise his fame by printing pamphlets in another's name, and in them praise himself, his wit, his might, all to be deemed his country's lanthorn light? Whoa, guys. I don't know if y'all notice what's happening here, but Marston's saying there is yet some other guy that's not Labeo. Because let's just say Marston is Labeo, and Labeo is printing under another name. That other name would be W. Kinsater, Marston's pen name. Okay, so that's one pen name. But here we are. Matho is yet another pen name. He's printing pamphlets in somebody else's name. Okay. This is a little complex, though, because that's almost the opposite of Poet Ape, right? Poet Ape is being accused of taking other people's work and putting his name on it. This is the opposite. This is, I'm taking my work and putting somebody else's name on it. Okay. But yet, we still have this printing thing going on. And we still have this same name of Matho who was buying in Hall, right? Okay. Well, the thing that I want to key in on here is this phrase at the end right here. All to be deemed his country's lanthorn light. Lanthorn's the old word for lantern. Okay, his country's lantern light. He's the brightest. He shines. He's great. I get the metaphor. I don't know if you guys read enough Decker, but Thomas Decker has a big pamphlet called Lanthorn and Candlelight. Now here's the problem: is that's not printed until 1608 or 09. So, that's long after this chance. That's a decade later. But here's the other thing: is that we've already seen from last episode there are multiple cases where Hall is probably, I'm not even going to say probably, Hall is for sure talking about stuff as if it was printed, yet we do not have those prints. So, like, for instance, George Peele, a.k.a. Strabo, his book on Troy, that's not supposed to be printed until 1602 or 03. Yet, Hall's here talking about it in 1598, but it has to be that. It's the only way for the text to, like, even remotely make sense. And once you do apply it, it makes 110%. It has to be it. And so, look, the thing is, guys, we don't have all the prints. We don't know if there was or wasn't a print. We just know that we do have the prints that we do. And so it's completely possible that Decker's already got, at least in manuscript, if not an earlier print, Lanthorn and Candlelight. Maybe it's an earlier version, but it seems to me that text is already known. And just in case you're not comfortable with that, I went and did a search, an EEBO search, Early English Books Online search, to search up the words Lanthorn and Candle. It's used by about 15 different authors. Each author uses it about once, except for Thomas Decker, who uses the phrase 5 times in 5 different works. That's not even including his work Lanthorn and Candlelight, which is titled that. Those are all from works that are where he just uses the phrase in a work, in a play or in a poem or something. So this is it's a highly Deckerian phrase. Okay, but still, here we just got country's Lanthorn light. Well, Brady, go ahead and search Mutius, Mutius.
In Marston?
Yep, same text. And while he's searching that, let's talk about that name Mutius. It means silent in Latin, or
M-U-T...
U-S.
Oh. Mutius?
Yep.
Or from Mutius.
Yeah. Okay. Means silent. But also, if you just Google the word Mutius, you're not going to get a Latin translation of silent. You're going to get a whole page of search bars telling, or of HTMLs about Shakespeare, because Mutius is pretty much only used in Titus Andronicus, and so it's one of Titus's sons that gets killed. Okay, so maybe this is a Shakespeare reference. Interesting, but let's look at it. When I late heard it from Mutius' lips, let me actually start at the top. My soul adores judicial scholarship, but when to servile imitatorship some spruce Athenian pen is prenticed. By the way, guys, anytime you see Athenian pen, that means London. Athens is London. And throughout Marston and Hall, Athens is London. So Athenian pen means someone from London. Brady, where's Thomas Decker from?
Like Germany or something?
People say that he might have been a Dutch immigrant, but the only place that we do know he lived is London.
Okay.
And all of his, like, he's sort of maybe the inventor of the city comedy. All of his city comedies are, that a city comedy is set in London. Okay, when I late heard, tis worse than apish. Apish, like poet ape? Fie, be not flattered with seeming worth. Fond affectation befits an ape. Okay, there we are at ape. And mumping baboon. Oh, what a tricksy, learned, nicking strain is this applauded, senseless, modern vein. When I late heard that senseless modern vein, from sage, wise, Mutius' lips, How ill methought such wanting jigging skips beseemed his graver speech. Quote, far fly thy fame, most of me beloved, whose silent name one letter bounds. Thy true judicial style I ever honor, and if my love beguile, not such my hopes, and then unvalued worth shall mount fair place when apes are turned forth. So here we go, guys. We got Mucius being likened to apes, and we got this whole thing about his one letter bounds his name, and Oxfordians have been like, E bounds Edward de Vere's name. It's at the very start, Edward, and it's at the very end, de Vere. E bounds the name, and E can be a silent letter. This is de Vere. Mucius is de Vere. But no, as David Richardson's pointed out to me, look at the term Sage Mucius. What letter does Sage Mucius start and end with? Oh. Sage Mucius is the name that is bounded. Okay? And it's silent because Mucius literally means silent. Literally means mute. Do you get the joke? So I don't think that Mucius is Oxford. I think Mucius is our ape, is our poet ape, is our Matho. Okay? One more, Brady. Go ahead, look up Muto, M-U-T-O. Which Muto is a different name than Mucius, but it, like Pontus and Pontian, it seems like the same one. Okay, here we go. Which, let me see. My bad. Okay. Help me to unmask the satire secrecy, Delphic Apollo. Aid me to unrip these intricate, deep oracles of wit, these dark enigmas and strange riddling sense, which pass my dullard brain's intelligence. Fie on my senseless pate. Now I can show thou writest that which I nor thou dost know. Which this seems like a callback to Joseph Hall's Virginiarium, where he says those that those that know right, but those that don't also do. And so this is part of that if you know you right or if you don't know you right kind of thing. Okay, continuing. Who would imagine such squint-eyed sight could strike the world's deformity so right? But take heed, Pallas, lest thou aim awry. Which Pallas? That's Athena, the spear shaker. Love nor yet hate had ever true judging eye. Who would once dream that same elegy, that fair framed piece of sweetest poesy, which Muto put betwixt his mistress's paps, when he, quick-witted, called her cruel chaps, and told her there he might his dolours read, which she, oh she, upon his heart had spread, was penned by Roscio the tragedian? Roscio the tragedian? Well, I won't make Brady search through all of it, but in a later part, he brings up this name Roscio again. And he'll bring up this name Roscius, which seems like the same as Roscio. And when he brings it up again, Roscio is an actor. And so maybe Roscio's our Shakespeare. I don't know. Yet Muto, like a good Vulcanian, an honest cuckold, calls the bastard son and brags of that which others for him done. Okay, here we are again. Muto's poet aping. This is all the same character. This is all the same person. Okay? Satire, though thou liest, for that same elegy is Muto's own, his own dear poesy. Why, 'tis his own and dear, for he did pay 10 crowns for it, as I did hear Roscius say. So Muto's buying plays. So it is his own because he bought it. So I just wanted to show that Matho, Mutius, and Muto are all the same character. And they seem to me to be the same character as Johnson's Poet Ape, which seems to be the same character as Demetrius. All of it points to Decker, whether it's the Matho anagram for Thomas, or Demetrius as Crispinius' best friend, aka Decker being Marston's best friend. Okay. But there is all this weird conflation with Shakespeare. Mutius from Titus. we get this almost kind of Venus and Adonis type stuff. Betwixt his mistress's paps. What's going on here? My bad, Brady. Search up the word Juliet.
And this one?
Mm-hmm. Okay, here we go. Luscus, what's played today? Faith, now I know I set thy lips a brooch. From whence doth flow naught but pure Juliet and Romeo? Huh. Juliet and Romeo, that's only one reference, right? That's Shakespeare, right? Okay. But what is it talking about? I don't know. Well, it does say that Marston's like, I know that I, Marston, opened your mouth, and when I opened your mouth, from it came pure Romeo and Juliet. Is that Marston saying that I wrote Romeo and Juliet? I don't know. But then he says, say, who acts best, Drusius or Roscio? There's our Roscio, the tragedian. But here he's not a poet, he's an actor. Have you figured it out? Roscio's Edward Allen, right? And, who would Drusus be then? Well, if Roscio's Edward Allen, Drusus is Richard Burbage, right? Who's the best actor, Who's better, Ronaldo or Messi, right? That's their discussion of the era. Who's better, LeBron or Jordan? That's their discussion. Now I have him that never of aught did speak, but when plays or players he did treat. He hath made a commonplace book out of plays, and speaks in print, at least whatever he says, is warranted by curtain plaudities. If you ever heard him courting Lesbia's eyes, say, courteous sir, speaks he not movingly from out some new pathetic tragedy? He writes, he rails, he jests, he courts, what not, and all from his huge long scraped stock of well-penned plays. Okay, scroll down for a second. Let's check out those footnotes, because it says there's a footnote here at number 5. What does number 5 say? So in the induction to the malcontent, quote, I am one that has seen this play often. I have most of the jests here in my table book, end quote. Thomas Dekker. So Thomas Dekker literally would go around with a commonplace book and write down good lines that he thought he saw in plays. And he admits to it in the induction to the malcontent where he's writing for Marston. Says, hey, look, all those good lines you did, I'm writing them down. And here Marston is saying, hey, all those good lines I'm doing that are on par with Romeo and Juliet, you're writing them down, and they're coming out of your mouth because you're writing them down from me. And Dekker is there saying, yeah, I did that. So, once again, Dekker is our poet ape here. Luscus, Matho, Mutius, whatever you want to call it, is Dekker. Huh. Okay. Well, let's go to the Parnassus plays. Because right above it, I want to note on this footnote here, it says, number 4, there is no allusion to Will Kemp's famous dance from London, Norwich, as that feat was performed in 1600. Kemp's jig was the name of a popular dance. There was a ballad that bore the same title. That footnote's not really relevant to our discussion, except that it's bringing up Will Kemp. Will Kemp is being talked about right here. Who is Will Kemp? Well, I mentioned Edward Allen and Richard Burbage. Those are the 2 most famous actors. Guess who's the 3rd most famous actor? It's Will Kemp. Those are the 2 great, full-on, well-rounded actors who can do tragedy and comedy. Will Kemp's the most famous comedian actor. Okay? And we're going to see him in the Parnassus plays. So go ahead and pull up the Parnassus plays, Brady. We've been podcasting so long, we got to reborrow this, guys. We've glitched out archive. All right. Yeah, sweet. It pulled up on that page, thank God. Okay, so there are 3 plays that came out of Cambridge between 1598 and 1603, and they're all called together the Parnassus plays. They came out in 3 parts. The first part's called Pilgrimage to Parnassus. Second part's called Return from Parnassus. Third part's called the second part of Return from Parnassus. We are in that third play, aka the second part of Return from Parnassus. And in that play, there is a direct, and in the other plays too, there are direct Shakespeare references, but this is the one we're going to focus on. This is a scene where the characters are literally Richard Burbage and William Kemp. The actors aren't. The actors would be some no-name dudes from Cambridge. They're playing the characters of actual actors from the time. Okay? And what we have is we have Richard Burbage, the great Lord Chamberlain's man actor, having a discussion with Will Kemp. And it says, Burbage says, "Now, Will Kemp, if we can entertain these scholars at a low rate, it will be well. They have oftentimes good conceit and apart." Kemp says, "It's true indeed, honest Dick, but the slaves are somewhat proud, and besides, 'tis good sport and apart to see them never speak in their walk, but at the end of the stage, just as though in walking with a fellow, we should never speak but at a stile, a gate, or a ditch, where a man can go no further." So he's making fun of how people like walk on the stage and they stop and then they, do their monologue. "I was once at a comedy in Cambridge, and there I saw a parasite make faces and mouths of all sorts in this fashion." And, mind you, this is supposed to be the character is supposed to be 2 of the greatest actors talking about how well other people act. And Burbage says, "A little teaching will mend these faults, and it may be besides they will be able to pin a part." So, okay, maybe if they're not good actors, maybe they can be writers. The Kemp says, "Well, few of the university men pen plays well. They smell too much of that writer Ovid and that writer Metamorphosis, and talk too much of Proserpina and Jupiter. Why, here's our fellow Shakespeare puts them all down. Aye, and Ben Jonson, too. Oh, excuse me. Oh, that Ben Jonson is a pestilent fellow. He brought up Horace giving the poets a pill. But our fellow Shakespeare have given a purge that made him beret his credit." Okay. We got Shakespeare here going against Jonson. Let's talk about this. Okay. Well, a lot of scholars, in fact all scholars, have been absolutely stumped by this passage because Shakespeare may have some participation in the Poets' War, but it's not all that direct. It's not as direct as the other participants. So if Shakespeare made fun of Jonson in Troilus and Cressida or Hamlet, it's not the biggest thing ever. It's not as much as what Jonson does to Marston and Dekker in Poetaster. It's not as much as Marston does to Jonson in What You Will or Jack Drums. And it's surely not as much as what Thomas Dekker does to Ben Jonson. And in fact, the Poets' War, no matter who you ask what they think about the Poets' War, they will tell you that it ends with Satyromastics. That Thomas Dekker nips it all in the bud by giving Jonson the absolute pounding that he deserved. And, here's the thing, guys. After this, Jonson's writing is so much better. Before the Poets' War, Jonson's not a good playwright. I don't like Everyman. I don't like Poetaster. I don't like Cynthia's Revels. Volpone, it's one of the best plays that's ever been written. Alchemist is the funniest play of the era. Epicene, fantastic play. So something happens to Ben Jonson, and people have said it's his experience with Shakespeare, and perhaps that is the case. But I would like to point out that no, it's this War of the Poets. We can't ignore that. And okay, so let's look at Satyromastics. We won't look at it in the play itself, but go ahead and go back to that Dekker biography, Brady. And okay, so let's look at this passage here. As I was saying about Robert II, not Duke of Normandy, I mixed that up. Robert II, King of Scotland. So if you guys already found that mistake of mine, and you already called me out for it, thank you, caught it. Yes, Robert II, King of Scotland, not Robert, Duke of Normandy, different play. Okay, with both men, John Marston and Ben Jonson, Dekker had been on friendly terms as late as September 1599. He was collaborating with the former and others, possibly Marston among them, on Robert II, King of Scotland. Throughout the period he was intimate with Marston. The intimacy was the chief, perhaps the only reason why about February or March he got dragged into the affair by Jonson and Cynthia's revels. And in that inhumanly tedious play, Mary's not a fan of Jonson's early plays either. In that inhumanly tedious play, Dekker is chiefly ridiculed as Aeneas, the humble friend of Hedon or Marston. He is poor, he knows the classics only superficially, yet accuses Critus, aka Jonson, of plagiarizing from them, and is, in general, quote, a light arrogating puff, rhymingly bracketed with Marston as, quote, impudent and ignorant enough. To this attack, Dekker showed no signs of replying, but Jonson, by his arrogance and his onslaughts upon other poets, had roused the wrath of a more numerous foe. The Chamberlain's men, according to Jonson's own account, asked Dekker to reply, or to use his enemy's words, quote, hired him to abuse Horace and bring him in a play. Even then, Dekker showed so little eagerness for battle that he was engaged upon his tragedy, so he was writing a tragedy, when probably around June of 99, Jonson concentrated his powers of satire in the Poetaster, directed primarily towards the glory of Ben Jonson, and secondarily against Marston and Marston's friend, Dekker. And incidentally, also against players, lawyers, courtiers, citizens, and citizens' wives. As he knew that Dekker was going to write a play against him, Ben Jonson, cleverly endeavored to discredit in advance that expected satire by representing his opponent, Dekker, as worthy of nothing but contempt. Quote, oh, sir, his doublet's a little decayed. He is otherwise a very simple, honest fellow. Sir, one Demetrius, a dresser of plays about the town here. Dresser of plays. There it is, guys. Demetrius. A dresser, or a.k.a. a Dekker of plays. Perhaps at this point Jonson was actuated less by contempt than by the desire to make a pun. However that may be, he puts into the mouth of Demetrius a poem mean in thought and doggerel in form, represents him as spiteful and given to slander, as in Cynthia's revels, guilty of criticizing Jonson's free use of the classics, although he does not thoroughly understand them himself. And so, I just want to point out, guys, what's the thing that everybody says about Shakespeare? That he's devoid of learning? That he doesn't have the classics? Beaumont says that about him. Jonson says that about him. That's the famous shift from the university wits to the Shakespeare era. Shakespeare says, I don't need to keep making all those allusions. Well, nobody makes less of them than Dekker. Dekker is the prototype of that. Dekker is the archetype of that. Okay. Let me see how much more of this I want to read. Okay. Guilty of criticizing Jonson's free use of the classics, although he does not thoroughly understand them himself. Finally, when brought to the bar, Dekker is made to take an oath not to slander Jonson or any other superior, and is forced to put on the cap and gown of a fool, to wear them, quote, in every fair and general assembly, and to think himself only what the cap and gown show him to be. Together with Marston, he is also accused of calumniating and envying Jonson, and of, quote, taxing him falsely of self-love, arrogancy, impudence, railing, filching by translation, etc. Charges specifically made to forestall the expected satire. Whether roused by his own indignation, or as seems more likely, by the insistency of Marston and the Chamberlain's men, among whom was Shakespeare, Dekker apparently set to work upon his reply as soon as the Poetaster, scroll a little bit, the Poetaster appeared. As he ridicules Jonson for requiring 15 weeks for the completion of his play, quote, what, will he be 15 weeks about this? You can click one more. Will he be about this 15 weeks? The cockatrice's egg too? He presumably finished his answer in a shorter time, about September, thinks Flie, who's an 1800 scholar. August or September writes Small, another one. Pressed for time or unable or unwilling to make an entire play of the satire, he had to join it to his unfinished tragedy. The connection with the main plot is made by representing Horace or Johnson as writing a nuptial ode for Celestine or Terrell, and at the close by making William Rufus, who was King of England, preside over the trial and punishment of Horace, just as Caesar Augustus had presided over the trial and punishment of Crispinius and Demetrius. Notice the name. Who is presiding over the trial and punishment of Horace? William Rufus. William the Red. William, like Shakespeare? And so people like Catherine Chilton and Bob Prechter, they see William Rufus and they're like, yo, that's Shakespeare. Yo, Shakespeare's Oxford. Yo, they're talking about Oxford. And no, they're not. William Rufus is the combined character of Marston and Dekker. Because a giant chunk of scholars think that this play is co-written by Marston and that it's not just Dekker attacking. And that maybe Marston's at least writing the opening of Satyromastix. And so at some point, yeah, William Rufus, a.k.a. William the Red, is Marston and Dekker. Fun fact, in every single play of Marston's, he identifies himself as red-haired. So anybody that's like, oh, Oxford's red-haired, that's a Marston thing. Okay. We can call it here on the Parnassus plays. I just want to point out one more thing. Brady, can you go to the wiki page on the Shakespeare Apocrypha? Okay. So, going back to Dennis McCarthy. Dennis McCarthy wants to say that pretty much all this Apocrypha, at least all the stuff printed in the 1600s during Shakespeare's time, where it's printed as Shakespeare or by W.S., he wants to say that all this is by Shaxper from Stratford. But I just wanted to point out that if we look at some of these titles, we can very quickly associate Dekker to them. Birth of Merlin, it's by Shakespeare and William Raleigh in 1622. Well, in 1622, William Raleigh is writing with Thomas Middleton, but another guy that he seems to be writing with is Thomas Dekker. Like, they had literally just finished The Witch of Edmonton. Okay. Alright. Next. Sir John Oldcastle. Yeah, I said we were going to bring that up again. As I said, it's by Anthony Munday, Michael Drayton, Richard Hathaway, and Robert Wilson. But what this wiki page doesn't show you is that Dekker makes additions to Sir John Oldcastle. Okay, Dekker check. Next one. Pericles, Prince of Tyre. Oh shit, Chance, that's actual Shakespeare. That's not Apocrypha, that's actual Shakespeare. But here's the thing, guys. Pericles, who's it written by? It's written by Shakespeare and George Wilkins. You know, you guys out there probably hate that George Wilkins stuff. But here's the fun fact. George Wilkins, he's kind of a no-name. He doesn't seem to have really written too much. Well, he had written one play before Pericles. And who's he write it with? You want to guess, Brady? Who's George Wilkins write his one play before Pericles with? Dekker? It's with Dekker. Okay, check, Dekker. Okay, Two Noble Kinsmen. Shakespeare and Fletcher. Oh, Fletcher, that's the only guy that does write with Shakespeare. Well, as Cyrus Hoy has pointed out, at least one, if not multiple, plays of Fletcher and Beaumont's is a reworking of a Dekker play, including The Bloody Banquet. Okay. Next. Edward III. So this is the one that, like, I can't immediately be like, oh, Dekker next. Edward III comes out in 1596. That's supposed to be before Dekker. But as Mary Leland Hunt has pretty well argued, Decker's got to probably be writing by 96 already. He can't be a noob in 97 and be the number one writer by 98. He's probably got to be there for at least 2 years, so 96. And yeah, it's getting published in 96, so probably written before that, but Dekker could be there as early as 93, 94. He'd be young. He'd be, 21, 22? But it's possible. because we do see Middleton as a 21-year-old writer. We do see Webster as a 21-year-old writer. We do see Marston as a 21-year-old writer. So that's all completely possible. The London Prodigal. The London Prodigal is usually given to Decker. If anybody does attribute it these days, they attribute it to Decker. Next. Second Maiden's Tragedy, that is attributed to Thomas Middleton. But as I mentioned earlier, Thomas Middleton may be Decker's number one co-writer. And Middleton does seem to be, if not co-writing with Decker, using Decker's plays over and over. Honest Horror. Virgin Martyr. Horror Babylon. Like, bunch of... Roaring Girl. Bunch of Decker Middleton overlap. Okay. Let's see. And then we get to Fair M. That's too early for Decker. But I don't think Fair M really reads like Shakespeare, so I don't really have a problem with this. Musidorus. It may be too early for Decker. It may not be, but Musidorus is a bootleg. I'm not too worried about it. Merry Devil of Edmonton is given to Decker. It's not in this copy. It's in volume 3 or 4, but it's in Decker. So there we go. Like, a good chunk of these are Decker or Decker associated. Scroll down just a little bit because there's a few more that I want to point out. These a little too far. A little more. Okay. Locrine. Locrine's kind of like Edward III. I'm not entirely sure. Kind of like Musidorus. I'm not entirely sure. It may not have anything to do with Decker. But Thomas Lord Cromwell, fun fact, that's given to Decker these days. And then the Puritan, we're back at Middleton, a.k.a. Decker's number one co-writer. Do you see how much Decker is on this Apocrypha? Do we really want to keep pushing the Shakespeare crap? Can we start looking at Thomas Dekker and start asking questions about Thomas Dekker and quit putting Shakespeare in isolation? You don't have to fully agree with me that Dekker might be in Shakespeare, but I do think that you gotta see that there are connections here that are somewhat unresolved, and Dennis's theories aren't answering it, and Ross's theories aren't answering it, and Bob Prechter's aren't answering it. Whose are? I'm trying, you know? But I did want to mention one more thing about Bob Prechter. So Bob Prechter lists a lot of stuff that he says is by Shakespeare, but one play that he says is for sure by Shakespeare, and he'll go to the grave on it, is a play called Patient Grisel, or Patient Grisel. Patient Grisel is in the Henslow Diary, is written by Henry Chettle, William Houghton, and guess who, Brady? Guess who? I know you're getting tired, Brady, but guess who?
It's Thomas.
It's fucking Thomas Dekker, guys. And so even Bob can't tell the difference between Dekker and Shakespeare sometimes. So, and I want to point out that it's not when Dekker's alone, it's when Dekker's co-writing where he really starts to bleed into Shakespeare. And I think that's significant. I don't know if that I have all the answers here. I don't even know if I think that Thomas Dekker is part of Shakespeare or is Shakespeare or anything like that, but I do think that we got to keep going down this and suss it out further and trying to sort of frame or pin all this stuff on Shakespeare, on these kind of hunches, just so that we can justify our doubts in the first place. It's not doing anybody any favors. And maybe I'll end on this note, because this is something that kind of bothered me about Ross's blog. Is on one of the pages, and I think it's actually on our Poet 8 page here. She says, which Elizabethan or Jacobean writers of note, active in the period 1590 to 1616, had works published under their names while they were alive, which we know to be written by others? As far as I can ascertain, the only certain answer to that question is William Shakespeare. There is no other writer of the period who fits Johnson's description so perfectly. So, I don't know if you guys saw what just happened there, but it's a problem. This whole blog is trying to argue that Shakespeare is a pseudonym, right? That is the claim. The claim is that Shakespeare is a pseudonym. And in their points of evidence, in Ross's points of evidence, where she's trying to say, look, Poet Ape is evidence that Shakespeare is a pseudonym, she proves that Shakespeare is Poet Ape by saying Shakespeare is a pseudonym. So she has used her claim to prove her claim. That's circularity, guys. We can't do that anymore. We got to stop. So, and this isn't to stick a knife in Ross's back, but I do think that Ross is still skewing herself away from the right answers from a very visible confirmation bias. Like, she's very, very much trying to confirm the antecedent here from the get-go. And, any of us that are Shakespeare doubters that don't want to get pummeled by the Orthodox, don't want to be made fools of, you can't engage in circularity. They're going to get you right at the start. You're an idiot because of that. And I don't think Ross Barber's an idiot, but they're going to paint her like one because of this. And I think we just have to be more careful. And once we are more careful, you start to see, oh, crap, maybe there is way more to this Decker thing than I thought. Demetrius, Matho, Mutus, Muto, Luscus. Where are you guys looking at those, or are you just only looking at Labeo? I'd like to know. So I'll end it here, guys. I've been on my high horse, been up on my pulpit rambling. Thank you so much for staying along with us, watching till the end. I know it was kind of a rambling maze, but hopefully you could follow the logic, and this at least perks up some interest and curiosity and some ideas. But I will let you guys go. Poor Brady's about to conk out on us. It's easy for me to have energy. I only have dogs and coffee at my house. Brady's got kids coming out the woodworks, and dadding's he's doing it. He's bringing a whole new generation of sackers. So.
Yeah, there you go.
Thanks, guys. Hope to be on again soon. Don't know how soon we will be. I hope some discussion can come from this. Like I was saying about Daniel's comment and about some of the interactions I've had. It's been incredibly rewarding. So if you got ideas, reach out. YouTube comments, Discord, Substack, email, however you need to. Let's get some stuff going. It doesn't even have to be with us. Go reach out to somebody else you got questions on. Make them talk to you. Let's get it all going on all sides. Let's start to nail it down so we're not just all preaching into the wind, like that South Park episode, right? I broke the dam. No, I broke the dam. No, I broke like guys, let's break the dam together, okay? All right. Thank you, guys.
It's supposed to be a Spartacus reference, like from that movie, I guess.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That is. Thank you, Brady.
Yeah.
Kubrick shout out. Which Jamie met Malcolm McDowell last night. Fun fact.
Huh.
Went to a horror film festival. And,
Interesting.
Yeah. Star Clockwork Orange.
He would also like him because he also does a voice in Fallout 3.
He's also one of the voices in Metalocalypse, Adult Swim show.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
He's part of the secret conspiracy elite that's controlling the world.
Yeah. Makes sense.
Yeah. All right, guys. I'll let Brady sign us out here. Thanks for tuning in. Hope to talk to y'all soon.
All right, everyone. Check out all the links down below in the description. Come check our Patreon page. Come hang out with us on Discord. Have a good evening, and as always, Nullius in Verba, everyone.